IVM.
Intel vPro provides the complete manageability tools to detect, repair, and protect your devices remotely so your workforce can keep doing what they do best wherever they are working from. Today, as most employees and IT teams no longer work under the same roof, fixing glitchy PCs and proactively managing the PC fleet has become increasingly difficult. The Intel vPro platform addresses these problems. With its Intel Active Management Technology, Intel AMT, vPro enables IT to keep mission-critical resources running by establishing a secure connection between IT and an Intel vPro platform-based PC. In the event of a cyber attack, Intel AMT lets IT remotely manage and repair systems simultaneously, even if they're dispersed across multiple locations. PCs can be recovered quickly wherever they may be. Plus, the Intel Endpoint Management Assistance, Intel EMA, enables cloud-based manageability using simple web-based tools to connect with and remediate any Intel vPro platform-based PC. Both these tools provide better manageability and faster response times, resulting in substantial device management support cost savings and fewer help desk tickets. Visit www.intel.in/itheroes to know more. Intel vPro, built for business. Here's your smart fact of the day. What exactly is a flipped classroom? Well, in the traditional model of classroom instruction, the teacher is typically the central focus, right? And the teacher disseminates the information in the class period, students listen. In a flipped classroom, homework becomes classwork. You learn something online or you learn something at your own pace at home, and you try to apply those concepts in class like what you do for typical homework. That's why it's called a flipped classroom. As an educator, as a teacher, I have taught across the pandemic, and I think for the past 2 years almost, I've just been teaching across various institutes online on Zoom, and it could be undergraduates, it could be postgraduates, it could be management professionals, it could be so many different types of people and so many different types of classes that I've taught. And two or three key things come to mind because they make me smarter as an educator, and perhaps they've made students smarter. Yeah, the pandemic perhaps has actually made students smarter. And this Smarter with Sid episode is trying to actually figure out how, and is there something that we can learn which goes beyond the normal classroom lecture. I mean, why do we even have a lecture in the first place? I mean, where did we get it into our heads that a person should stand on stage and, anywhere between 20 to 200, 300 people should be listening to that person? Is that the best possible way in which learning can happen? I think there are some inherent flaws in the lecture, but maybe we didn't have too much of choice at that point in time, maybe 200 years back or 300 years back when the first lectures were developed. There were perhaps the best kind of technology that we had, an auditorium, a person orating and trying to teach something that people did not know. But the world has changed so much because of, so many different things that have happened after that. And we still continue with the lecture as a form of educational instruction. Think about it. We have information that is readily available to students. So it's not like the teacher knows more than the students that the teacher is giving, to students. The second thing is, we have the ability to reach to much more of a scale online than you could ever reach in a actual physical class. But we still have the lecture as an option. The third thing is we can also look at the lecture as a one-way street, right? I mean, that was doable when people were not expected to talk back and social norms were constructed like that. But over here, people are expected to talk back. So then why is the lecture still a thing? Can we actually find a better way of instruction for our new learners and new students? That was the big question that most people were grappling with just maybe 2 or 3 years back. And then the pandemic struck. The pandemic brought about such a sudden drastic change that all lectures were obviously shifted online, and people, whether they liked it or not, had to come online. And lecturers, they were just not used to moving from being a stage artist to being a film artist. That's what I'd called it jokingly in a seminar that I attended, because it was about did the future of digital education. It was arranged by the government of Uttar Pradesh, and it was a very enlightening discussion. I learned so much about it, and one of the most important things that I learned is that I don't think we found it. I don't think we found the solution to actually the alternative for a lecture. But there are clues. There are clues. I mean, if I look at the way in which blended learning has come into being, it is quite an amazing experiment. I started off with the upgrads and the talent edges of the world, and it was around the time about 6 7 years back that people started going towards digital education, not the typical digital education done by universities, because that was not it was used to be called MOOCs, and they failed. But these were new players. They knew exactly how to arrange for a system that allowed for the sort of support of learning in an ecosystem that was completely brand new. And they had built this space for that learning. And that learning was of two types. One was live sessions, and the second, obviously, is learning at your own pace. And this had continued till the pandemic hit. And then suddenly universities had to wake up. There were some of us who had taught online, which therefore we found it easy to do those live sessions. But there were some of us who were struggling. But now institutes have come up with their own formulae. I mean, for example, Mica runs a very interesting formula. At Mica, what we as educators do is that we record some content that people, all the learners, all students go through as pre-views rather than pre-reads. And then in the lecture itself, which is a live session, we use the equivalent of a flipped classroom, which is where we kind of apply the concepts that the recorded content shows. So as a lecturer, we just put up a caselet to be discussed in class. So the class is actually split into one component of online learning, which is pre-recorded content, and live learning, which is again online, but it is live, which is the application of that concept. And there are so many other universities which are trying out their own formulae. I think the Mica system also works because it allows for Zoom fatigue not to happen. But isn't it amazing that because of this pandemic, because of the adversity that the pandemic has got, we have explored and completely rejigged this format. And now I'm beginning to wonder whether we should ever return to a full-fledged typical lecture, even if campuses are opened. Because I don't know whether that's the best way for learning anymore after having experienced the alternatives. Now, think about it. If I look at the alternatives, I have the ability to learn at my own pace through a pre recorded content from the professor. I have the ability to discuss concepts in detail or apply them in class along with a bunch of students. So, isn't that actually going to be deeper learning? I think so. Now, that live session right now, because of the pandemic, is being held online. It could also be offline. But then, do we realize that actually we are beginning to unpack education out of one of its primary constituents, which is the lecture in the classroom? Now, the lecture in the classroom is also by itself going to undergo some changes. One of the changes that I think extremely crucial for future learners might be actually going to a classroom to observe not one guy standing on a podium, but maybe a multitude of guys and gals having a conversation. Maybe a panel can be a lecture, maybe a conversation can be a lecture. Now, again, this panel can be online, this panel can be in a class, this panel can be live, this panel can be pre-recorded. But now we are looking at a completely different animal. We are not looking at one person holding forth and trying to make stuff happen in the minds of people who are trying to learn, because eventually students want to do stuff on their own. They don't want to be lazily listening to educators, because even though they might think they want to, at least some of them, it's not good learning. It doesn't help in long-term recall. It doesn't help in long-term application. And there is no real practical use of, that kind of learning at all. So therefore, I think the typical lecture we should kind of retire. I think not the lecturer, but the lecture is what we should retire and look at different kinds of learning, which include the flipped classroom that we spoke of at the beginning of this episode, or the blended learning thing, or maybe conversations, either online and offline, and completely in a blended way. I think we are in for an exciting world towards learning because we are going towards learning across our lifetime. And I think that we need to be completely open towards new ways of learning and new ways of teaching as we progress in the world ahead. I hope you like this episode of Smarter with Sid. Many more to come from where this came from. And if you like stuff like this, IVM Podcast is the place to go. You'll get some really good content out there. And hey, if you like an educator like me, well, he has a funny side to him. Go to the Traveling Professor, connect with the Traveling Professor on Instagram, and you'll see a reel or two that might make you chuckle. And if you want to see the serious side of the Traveling Professor, well, you go to LinkedIn and you see the notes that I make accompanying these podcasts and much, much more. Until next time, see you soon.
$100. That's all it takes to begin your journey with Bitcoin and Ethereum. No, really. With CoinSwitch, you can start investing in over 100 cryptocurrencies with just 100 rupees. On top of that, there are zero charges for deposits and withdrawals, so you can trade, buy, sell, however and whenever you want. All of this, plus their extremely intuitive interface, makes CoinSwitch the perfect app for beginners in the crypto space. But don't take my word for it. Just download CoinSwitch for free and try it out for yourself. If you'd like more information on cryptocurrencies, tune into A Show About Crypto with me, Rohan Joshi, my new adventure on IVM Podcasts. CoinSwitch, kuch to badlega.
Hey everybody, it's been a great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast, Ashwin and DJ dive into all the major scoops from the first week of the IPL's 2021 second leg. They talk about the Indian women's team beating Australia in the third ODI, breaking their winning streak of 26. On KBCD, Farhad and Sunetra are in conversation with mental health practitioner Unnati Bharadwaj. They discuss loopholes in the mental health industry, especially for queer individuals, and how to come out safely to friends and family. On All Things Policy, Priyal Dalmeda and Ruturaj Govekar discuss the rationale behind booster shots. On Hans Vani, listen to an intriguing story called Aankhein about how our eyes see everything and yet sometimes fail to grasp reality. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina talks about the implications of burnout. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any other show for that matter, please do tell a friend. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Bank of Baroda, Quarter, CoinSwitch, Kuber, and Inter. We appreciate the support.
Namaste, this is Cyrus Brocha. I am part of the government cancel culture program to remove rubbish off all the different streams available. So what we have is all the collected rubbish we put together on our show. It's called Cyrus Says. It's on IVM Podcast. You have to watch it and listen to it. It's on our app. It's on our website. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on Facebook. There are many different ways. Don't bother me and ask me how. You have to find out. We talk to different personalities. Many of them are known. Some are just people we meet downstairs and invite them up for chai. But the point is, it's fun and it's very therapeutic. So please join in and listen to Cyrus Says.